Well, hello and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I built a simple Django full stack application. Here's just a simple blog where I will submit a blog post from the back end, from the Django admin screen, and it will populate here on the all post view. Once it populates on the all post view, we have the ability to click read more to get more details into the blog post. You also have the ability to leave a comment. So if this was something that you wanted to leave a comment on, you can just type in your name, your email address, and once you click post, you'll notice that your comment appears here at the bottom. So if this is something that you think you'll be interested in building, stay tuned. So the first step in building our full stack application is to set up our environment variables. Now you can use any environment variable that you wish. I'm going to be using virtual env. And once you have your environment installed, then you want to activate it, and this can take a few moments, so just hang in there with me. So the next thing that we want to do is type in the following command: /env/scripts/activate. And the way that you know that this worked is on the left hand side. You're going to see the env in parentheses, and then we want to type in pip install Django to install Django. So we'll give that a moment or two to install. Okay, so now that the installation is complete, the next thing that we want to do is we want to establish our project. And the way that we do that in Django is we type in the command Django-admin space start project space, and this project I'm going to name first_bg for blog, and we'll give that a second to install. And then after it's finished its installation, the next thing we need to do is cd into that folder. And now that that's done, the next thing we want to do is type the command python manage.py space start app, and the name of my app is going to be blog. All right, so now that we've installed our app, the next thing we want to do is enable it inside of our main project. So we'll go to first_blog. Once we click on that, we'll click on the second folder, scroll down to where it says install apps, and we just want to bring in this particular app so that it is enabled within our main project. Blog folder, let's click on models.py, and we're going to do class-based models, of course. So let's type out class post models.model. This is the built-in Django feature that's going to enable us to build out models. And then for each of the fields that go along with our models, we want to create a variable. So the first one will be title, of course. And then from there, we want to type in models.char field, and we're going to give it a max length of 100 characters. You can set it to whatever you choose. Next, we're going to create a slug. Now, the slug is going to allow us to click on our individual posts and give it a designated URL. Next, we'll create intro. This is optional. This is just a view that'll be on our main home screen that I want to include. Next, we'll create the actual body of the post itself, and I'm going to leave this particular text field blank. And then last but not least, we'll create the date added feature, which will allow us to see when this actual post was created. Okay, so now that we have this created, the next thing that we want to do is enable this into our database. So we'll type out the command python space manage.py make migrations, and as you can see, we created the post model. And from there, the next thing we want to do, we'll just clear it out to give us a little more space. We want to type in python space manage.py migrate, and this is going to migrate the items to our database. Now that it just takes a few moments for it to finish. And then once we have that finished, we'll go and we will create our admin user by typing the command python space manage.py create super user, and that super user is all one word. So from here, it's going to ask us to create an admin username. I'm just going to use the name of my channel, the JA-Dad. Then from there, I'm going to use the email address. You can use any email address of your wishings. And then we just type in a simple password, something that's easy for you to remember. I wouldn't make it easy if we were looking to deploy this, but since this is just a simple local application, we can do so. So now that we have our super user created, we're going to run our server just to see what we have. And as you can see, we have successfully created our Django app. And in the URL, we'll go to /admin. And let's see, we should have seen our admin schema in the database here, but that's okay. Let's take a look. And that's right. Let's go into admin.py and register our schema, our model into the database. So the first thing we'll do is we'll import it from space.models import post. And from there, we'll type in the command admin.site.register. And we're going to pass in post because that is what we want to register. Now we'll save our Visual Studio Code, refresh the site, and voila, we can see posts are now created in our Django admin. So from here, we'll just create a couple quick posts just so that we can have some posts in the database. And then the next step is we'll work on displaying those to the front end. So give me just a moment. I'm just going to type in some data here to create our posts. So now that we have a couple posts in our database, the next thing we want to do is set up the rendering of our home page. And in order to do so, we're going to need to go to our views.py. Think of views.py as the main index that houses all the functions that render the template. So just to make sure that everything is working properly, the first I'm going to establish is home page. And within homepage, you want to pass in a request because it's going to accept a request. And now I just want to render out a request, of course. And the name of the file that I want to render out is going to be blog/homepage. Blog is going to represent the folder that is within the templates folder that's going to host our homepage.html. And of course, the homepage.html is going to be where our homepage will reside. So now that we have our views.py set up, the next thing we want to do is establish the URL for our homepage. Gonna keep this fairly simple. So first we'll do is we'll import the blog.views into our urls.py. And then once we have that set up, we'll want to go down to our URL patterns, create path, and we'll keep this standard as our with no additional words after the slash. After we have the normal parentheses there, we'll do a comma, and we want to use the home page variable because that's the page that's the function that's going to be rendered from views.py. And then the name of the file is going to be home page. So once we have that in our urls.py, we can click on save. Then what we want to do is we want to create the folder that's going to house all of our HTML documents. So the cool thing about Django is that it has built-in functionality. So the name of the folder will be templates, and within templates will be the blog folder. And within blog, we're going to have a base.html, and we're also going to have a homepage.html. Now the base.html is going to be where the foundation of our website will be. So I'm going to bring in the HTML boilerplate code on this site. And from here, we're going to be able to render out a foundation to the 2 additional sites that we're going to have. So just for aesthetics, I'm going to change the title to blog post. And from here, we'll need to use this particular Jinja syntax. And if I mispronounce that, I'm so sorry. In order to let Django know that, hey, this is going to be the main body of our pages, and anything outside of this block content, whether it be before or below the block content, and we'll see that a little later on, that's what's going to be rendered each page. Very similar to what you would do in React or any of the other frameworks. Then we'll go to the homepage.html, and up top, we'll bring in this particular syntax to say that we're going to extend the blog/base.html to this particular view. And I just want to make sure that everything is working properly. And in order to do that, we'll need to include some additional syntax saying that, hey, this is the block content that would have been inserted in the base.html. And whenever you have block content, you also need to make sure that you have in block as well. But we'll see that you'll need to do that not just on this syntax, but in other syntax as well. Now that we have that set up, let's just create a simple H2 that says hello from the home page just to make sure everything is working properly. And we'll click on this link and it looks like it's saying the template does not exist. So I'm sure I've made some error somewhere. Let me take a double look here and let's see. Okay, so I just stopped and restarted my server, refreshed my screen, and it looks like everything is working properly. I'm just going to double check it here just to make sure. So it looks like it just may have been slow to recommunicate back with my server. So the next thing I want to do is I want to go to Bootstrap in order to set up my Bootstrap, in order to give some styling to my website. Give me just a moment here. I know those links are, here we go. Let's click on download. There we go. And so we'll grab these two links and add them into our base.html just to give a little bit of styling to the page. I'm not going to do a whole lot in this particular video, but I do want to give it some aesthetic look. So we'll go over to base.html and paste those links into the header, and we'll grab the JavaScript links and we'll add those to the bottom of the base.html as well. And just to make sure that this is working properly, let's refresh our screen and we see our font changes. So we see that we do have Bootstrap set up successfully. So the next thing that we want to do is finish. Well, the next thing we want to do is bring our post to our home page. And in order to do so, we'll need to go to our views.py and we'll need to set up some variables in order to grab the information from our database. So first thing we'll do is we'll bring in the model so that we know what we're looking for from the database. Then in the home page function, want to create a variable named post and set it equal to post.objects.all. You can name the variable anything that you wish. Make sure that your post or your first word before objects matches your model. And then once you have the post variable set up, you want to use it like a dictionary in the render method so that it renders to the home page. And then now that I've done this, I'm going to stop and restart my server just to make sure that everything is working properly. And before we do any styling or anything, I just want to make sure that we're able to communicate with our backend. So just bear with me while I type in the Django syntax in order to loop through our database and pull out all posts so that we can display those onto the screen. We want to make sure that we include an end syntax at the bottom. So this is going to be end for because we're ending the for loop. And then we want to use the special syntax in order to destructure, the post. And the first thing we want to destructure is the title. So we'll do post.title. And then the next thing that we want to the next thing that we want to destructure is the intro, because this is the home screen. So we just want to show a brief introduction to the post. And if we go back to our website and refresh, we see that we have the title and post onto our home screen. So now that we have that information displaying, we'll go ahead and add in a little more styling so that it starts to come to life a little bit and resemble what we're going for. Okay, now just hang in there with me. I'm basically just going to type in a bunch of Bootstrap. If you want me to explain this in upcoming videos, just let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to move this along a little bit so I don't have to read out each letter that I am typing in. Right. So now that we've completed our home page, let's move on to our base.html. And from here, the main thing that I want to do is I want to put this inside of, well, first off, I want to establish the header. The header is the main text that you saw in the middle of the window, just to give it a different look or to give it a little more to its look, so to speak. Nothing that's essential to the functionality of the full stack app. It's just more of a personal preference for me. So just give me a moment. Now, the next thing I want to build in, since we have our header and we see just some simple text here on the screen, just a simple footer just to give it a little more style. Again, nothing is central to the project, but just want to give it a little bit of life. Next, let's go to views.py and add in this particular URL into our views.py. So we'll close out these screens and we will go into blog, and we will, no, excuse me, we'll go into first_bg. And once we do that, we'll click on urls.py. And I know we have not created these views just yet, but just hang in there with me. Let's type in detail. Then here, let's type in path. And we're going to use this particular syntax in order to generate a slug. And it's going to come after our post URL. And we'll add a slash to this particular syntax, comma, space, detail, comma, name. And then with the name of this is going to be detail. So now that we have this, we'll go to our views.py and create function detail. And we're going to pass in an argument of request. And we're going to add additional argument of slug, which is going to be the slug of the post that has been clicked on. Create a variable name post, use the post.objects.get. This is using that model again. And this time we want to pass in slug equals slug, because that's the slug that we need to generate the unique post. And we want to render back a request, and we want to render the blog/detail.html page, excuse me. And from here, we want to pass in another dictionary. This dictionary is going to be post, and we were just going to assign the variable name of post. Next, we want to create this view within our templates folder. So inside of templates blog, let's right click and create detail.html. And within this particular detail view, we're going to extend the same view, our base view, to this view as well. Then let me go ahead and create a way to go to the home view. I always tend to forget this whenever I create application. Now I'm going to add in the syntax to bring the data from the back end to the front. Just hang in there with me. I do have some bootstrap. I'm going to go ahead and do the styling now versus going back and forth. So just hang in there with me while I type out some of this bootstrap syntax. But the important piece is to make sure that we have the correct syntax in order to get the post title, the post intro, the post body, and the created date. So I'll make sure that you can clearly see that information, because that's what's going to be most important, to get the information from the post that the user clicked on from the database to our detail page, so the user can see the detail. Now I am going to click on home page so that we have a way to access the individual post detail. So give me just a second here. We'll type in the href right here next to read more, and just hang in here with me. The only difference between this and the block content syntax is you want to include URL space, quotation detail within it, and in space post.slug. And if we go back to our web page and we refresh, we see that we are getting a syntax error. So let me take a look, and it looks like I may have missed a colon where the extends is at. I don't see that I closed it out. So let me go back to detail.html and add in the colon here, and let's refresh. And what do you have it? Another error. Okay, rendering template, missing the end. Here we go. Got to make sure, I should have did this in the beginning. Let me make sure I include this end block. It is important when using Django, Flash 2 for that matter. So let's go back and refresh, and voila, we are here. And if we click back to home, we see we go back home, we go to read more, we're going to the correct screen, so it's working properly. So now that we see that it is working properly, let's go ahead and build out the rest of our web page. Just hang in there with me. This is just going to be a bunch of CSS. I think you see the syntax that's needed in order to get the body of the post onto the screen. Let's refresh the screen to take a look, and voila, we see that we have the post body content onto the screen, but it doesn't look like I included the container around it because it's taking up the entire width. So let me go back to my base.html and add in the container. All right, so we're on detail. Let's go to base.html. We'll scroll up. Give me just a moment. I'll copy this or cut it out to make it easier. And let's type this in, put it in a section, and let's add in container. And let's check our view. And there we go. So now it is within container. So the only thing that we have left now is to add in the comments, and we're going to use the Django Forms functionality in order to help us with that. So I'll show you how I set that up here in just a moment. Back in our text editor, let's go to our blog project, and let's go to the models.py. And from here, let's add in a couple things. So the first thing I want to do is I want to have a way to show the most recent post on our home screen. This is optional, nothing that is essential, just something that I want to include on this particular project. So I'm going to use class meta, and from here we're going to create a variable named ordering. And of course, with Python, all you need to do in order to change the filtering is just to add the minus sign in front of the date.add or underscore added. And then we'll create our class comment here, and we'll call it comment. And of course, we'll pass in models.model, and we'll create a variable named post. Now the post is going to be looking for a foreign key. The foreign key is a unique key that's going to be associated with the post. So although it's a comment, this comment is going to be associated with the post. And if you delete the post, we want to delete the comment as well. The next thing we want to have is name. This is just going to be the name of our user that wants to leave there. And we could have named it username, but just the name of our user that wants to leave a comment. Last but not least, we're going to have email, just as another way to have some form of identifiers since we're not using any form of authentication in this project. Lastly, we'll have body. And then with the body, this is just the body of the comment itself. Nothing that needs to be too strenuous, but we'll just leave it the text field of it blank. And we'll include date underscore added as well, just so that we can identify when the post was added, just to give it a little more of a more real life blog type feel. Next, in order to post a comment, we want to create a form, and we're going to use the built-in Django Forms feature. So we'll create a forms.py inside of our blog folder. Within this, we want to bring in from Django, import forms. Then we want to use from.models, import comment. This is so that Django knows that, hey, we're going to associate this form with the comment. And then we want to create a class called comment form and pass in forms.model form. That way we can follow the model form. And because I'm customizing this just a little bit, we're creating our own, but we could have easily used what's built in as well. So I'm going to use model here. The model is going to be a comment, and the fields that I want to have to associate back with the comment is name, email, and body. So now that we have our form set up, let's go ahead and move to our views.py, and this is where we're going to this is where we house our backend functionality that we want to render to our home page. So this is going to be on the detail function. So let's just type in this syntax, and I'll kind of talk through it as I'm typing it here. So the first thing we want to do, if the request is, if it equals to post, and anytime that we submit a request to the database, that's considered a post. We want to grab the form, and I need to bring in the comment form, but I'll do it just a moment. And within that comment form, we want to pass in a request.post because this is information that we want to post to our database. But let me bring in the comment form here just a second. And now that we have the comment form, Python, but Django isn't yelling at us anymore. The next thing we want to do is create another if statement just to say that if the form is valid, because we don't want to send bad data to our database. That's a big no-no. We want to create a variable that's going to save our form or save our comment, excuse me. And we don't want to commit right now. If we were hosting this on a live server, we were hosting this on the web, that would change true, and this process will be a little different, but we'll use comment false right now. Then we want to have comment.post equals post, and we ultimately want to save this post into, this comment into our database. And then once it's saved, we just want to redirect. We probably didn't need to redirect, but we're going to redirect back to the detail page of this particular post. I guess it's more of a preference. We could have sent it to the home page, but I'm going to render it back to this detail view so that you can see the comment that's created, and you can look at other comments as well. And of course, because we're using the built-in Django feature or function redirect, we need to make sure that we bring it into our project as well. And anytime we have an if statement, it's good to have some form of an else statement, especially with the web application. And I'm just going to use comment form if something breaks or isn't used correctly. So like we did with our home page, we're going to need to include the dictionary as well. We're going to need to include this data to our front end, to the detail page, and we're going to pass it in the form of a dictionary. And because we already have a dictionary listed here, we're just going to add the comma and the correct syntax in order to pass through the form. And then now that we have the backend set up, we don't need to do anything with our URLs. I'll go ahead and close out these additional tabs that we have open, because the last thing that we'll need to do is spend some time bringing this information to life on our detail page. So before we move into our detail page and add in our comment form, we need to make sure that we make migrations to the database, since we added a new model that we want included into the database, which I've done, which is why you see create model. Now we need to do python manage.py migrate, and to make migrations, this is the same syntax that we used earlier. It's just going to be python manage.py make migrations, all one word. And now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and run our server, and we want to go back to our detail page, because I kind of just want a little bit of a visual as we build out our comment form and make sure that we can display comments properly. So just a moment. All right, so just hang in here with me. I have quite a bit of syntax. Most of this is my fault because of the styling that I chose to do. But I'm going to kind of talk through what I'm typing in so that it makes a little bit of sense. So now we want to create our form, and with any form, anytime that we create a form, we want to make sure that we add in the method, and the method is going to be post, and we want to include the action. And for this, we just want to make sure that we have the parentheses and a period inside of the parentheses. And I'm just adding in some optional styling right here. Nothing that you have to include in order to make the functionality work. I'm just want to add a little styling, that's all. So inside of the form, this is where it gets a little unique. So anytime you're submitting a form within Django, you want to make sure that you're including this syntax just to let it know that, hey, we're making a secure post request and we're passing in a token. And then the next syntax that we want to make sure that we include is that we're including is this form dot form dot as underscore p, and this is just special syntax from Django since we are using the Django forms just to make sure that it can submit properly. And when I attempt to submit this form, I am getting an error. Let's see. So it looks like I have the syntax wrong for the forms.as underscore p. You don't need the modular symbol, the percent symbol. It just needs to be still wrong. It needs to be double quoted, not using that percent symbol. So let me refresh, save, and voila, we can see the form displayed on the screen. Gonna add in some well, first let me make sure that I include the important piece, which is type submit. Then I'll add in a little bit of styling, nothing necessary in order to make it work. Okay, so now that we have the form displaying properly, I think the next thing we'll do is set it up so that all the comments are displayed on the screen. So give me just a second. Okay, so just as we done with our post, we'll need to loop through the database and look in our comments table to make sure that, or to see what comments that we have that can be displayed. So give me just a second. I'm going to type out the same syntax that we used in our home page view to display the post on the main page. All right, and just hang in there with me, just a little more CSS or bootstrap. Okay, so now that I have the styling here, going to add in the final syntax in order to have the comments display on the screen. The the important piece of this is to make sure that you're doing the double brackets. First one that I'm going to list here is comment.name. That's just showing the name of the user that submitted the comment. In the p tag here, I'm just going to do a little bit of styling, and then we'll do the double brackets and we'll do comment.body. This is for the body of the content that we submit on the screen. And I'm gonna come down one closing div tag, create a small tag here. I just want to show who actually created this. I'm sorry, not who. I want to show the date of that this comment was created, just to give it a little more of a modern feel. We'll add a little bit of bootstrap just to change the opacity of this, just so that it's not as prevalent as the other text on the screen. And we certainly want to make sure that we include the end for tag. We learned a lesson in the last video where I forgot to include the tag and it didn't work. So I'm going to make sure that I, number one, include the end tag on this one, but I also want to just add a little more of a user-friendly feature. And what this syntax is that if it is empty, meaning that there are no posts, and I'm doing this within the for loop, it's almost like a if-else statement. It's going to do, or we're going to show a little message on the screen asking the user to be the first comment. That way it doesn't seem like we don't have any engagement on the screen, and it's a way to maybe entice someone to be first to comment on a post versus being in the majority. And right here under the empty tag, as I mentioned, we want to include the end for. This is just saying that we're ending the for loop. We've completed that. Let's test this. Well, before we test it, let's just go ahead and restart our server just to be on the safe side. And everything, no errors. And we will just refresh the screen. We see the empty comment message there. And well, I tell you what, let's go ahead and make sure that it works before I change anything else. So I'm just going to add in my guy jack@gmail.com, just a test comment. We'll click post, scroll down, no errors, and boom, we have a post. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the styling of this to black. This is just personal preferences, nothing that is required. And I'm going to do it here because Django, it's a little more work in order to include those static files. So I'll change this to black, refresh the screen, and there you have it. It works. And we'll go back to the home screen just to make sure there are no concerns. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please feel free to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. Until then, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.